that an institution user, Zoe, can navigate the institution account. The UX team drew up the student site map, which I've pasted over here at the top for reference, somewhere right here for your quick reference. Oh, invite people to join you. What is this? I don't know what that did. Okay. And we talked about the workflow for program information. So we showed you that the program will be separated into two components: program information as the main parent, and then its subsequent offering information and their wireframes. So from what I understand, that's a big change. Also, we sadly had to say goodbye to Pushan, one of our developers.
Track to make sure that things are smooth as butter. And actually,
Something as smooth as butter. So if everyone could kindly mute themselves, that I would appreciate that. But yes, so we had to say goodbye to Pushan. He is in India right now, and we can't get him home in time to keep going through some of this data privacy stuff. So hopefully we can have him back in the future. With that, I will pass the mic over to you, Elise. Here we are in sprint 10.
Sprint 10. Wow. Oh gosh, I touched it. That's
no touching.
I know, I have to keep my hands off. These mural boards are pretty touchy.
Just
all right, so what have we been doing in Sprint 10? We have been, the technical team has been working on the data model for program. So what we showed you last time was the UX UI design. And so now the technical team has to get ready to build it. So that's what they've been doing this sprint, as well as continuing to do the work. We showed you some of the initial work on the assessment, a whole bunch of different tables last time, so you can see. So they've been continuing to work on that. We have worked on the user research plan. We've been working on the application questions and getting them in all the right order. As well as including appeals questions. We have been starting to think about how do we verify permanent disability outside of the application and inside the application. And of course, some more work on how do we see education or view education programs, as well as trying to work through some of the last pieces on our designation. The development team is going to show us today some of the stuff they've been doing, which includes sending and receiving information in order to validate the SIN. How do you navigating through that institution location view and the account location details. So lots of different things that are going on. Just going to remind you of a few kind of businessy things before we jump into it. And I always think, did I hit the right ones, and think of other things as we go through. But just a reminder that we showed you last time about this new idea of separating out program information from offerings. We did share that with our sector advisory group. Went really well. And one of the things, and we're going to show you our user research plan in a little bit, but one of the agile methodology really talks about making sure that we're including end users in our process and making sure that their information is informing our decision making. And so we're actually starting to take that research plan, which we're going to show you, and in our next sprint starting to actually do some testing. So we're going to have some of our institution users come in and do some of that. So we'll explain to you some of that methodology that we've been working on. Just a reminder as well that, of course, we've been talking about the institution account, and as Michelle mentioned, the site maps at the top there. So all institution accounts will have one or more locations, and it's from the location that institution users are going to be managing programs, managing applications, as well as managing the users that they have in their account. Designation is managed at the institution account level, and then the word cascaded maybe is the best word, cascaded across the one or more multiple locations, assuming that that location meets the eligibility criteria for designation. Another thing we're going to show you today, and some of you that joined us last Wednesday at our business meeting had a bit of a sneak peek, but we're also going to share with you our integrated application workflow. And just a reminder that this is about how we're meeting one of our strategic opportunities, which was to integrate the full-time and the part-time application, as well as trying to use that workflow as much as possible for other applications, which we'll start to work on a little bit later. So just a reminder, of course, that all the stuff that we're showing you, this is your chance to give us feedback. So please share your feedback with us. But I will call out from the very beginning, I'm sure there are some spelling mistakes. There may even be some things in the wrong place. This is not the very, very final version of things. But if you have feedback on stuff related to what we're showing you, please share it or throw a note in the chat or send me a note later, because really want to get your feedback. And again, reminding folks that as much as possible, what we're trying to build are pathways that we can reuse. So for example, the workflow of the application, that's where we're very intentionally saying, okay, well, rather than building two workflows, a full-time and a part-time, let's build one. And let's reuse that for both of those applications. And could we use any of that workflow for the next application? Could it be used for the BC loan forgiveness or tuition waiver? How can we reuse some of that work so that the student experience is as streamlined as possible? And also it allows us to reuse work that we've already done, which of course allows us to move forward in a quick way. So those, I think, are the key business things I want to share for now, and I will pass it back to you, Michelle.
Thanks, Elise. So the UX team has done some great work this past week. I also should mention that we've had to say goodbye to Courtney. Courtney has been an integral part of our team for the last couple weeks, but she's just been too high of demand and has too much going on in her department. So we've lost her as of today, but she's still going to be helping us in the background. But yeah, so we'll be small and mighty for the next little while. But they still managed to do quite a lot. Roop was able to draft a user research testing plan, and Courtney was able to create an updated workflow of the full-time and part-time application as one, and we'll show you how that looks. And then also we got to take a stab at the designation agreement pages within the sitemap to see how that looks. So without further ado, I will pass the mic and screen over to you, Roop, to discuss the user research testing plan.
Thank you. Let me get my screen going here. Hi, everyone. So let's talk user research. And I wanted to kind of kick off and just kind of explain what user research is in our context. So some of you might be familiar with it, and if you've heard it before, then please humor me. And if you haven't, it's a great opportunity to learn a little bit more about what UX does in terms of user testing. So the difference between our user testing versus something like user acceptance testings, or UAT, which you may have heard before, is a difference of does the function in the built application do exactly what we want it to do, versus what is the experience of a user going through the application, and does the experience make sense to them? So what we're going to be doing in our initial testing is more qualitative than it is quantitative. It's not a yes, no, kind of did the task get completed in our application, did the thing get added to the database. We're more concerned about, does it make sense how you're moving through the application? Does the workflows that we're proposing to our users make sense to them? And the way we're going to do that is throughout the entire Agile process. The typical way that this has been done in the past has been, we'll build the whole dang thing, and then you're going to look at it with your users and see how things went, where we try to account for every single thing and hope that we found all of those workflows and we accounted for everything. But the purpose here is to build with them. The purpose is to talk to them throughout the entire process. So yeah, just to give you a quick overview, the idea is that it's a long document. I'm not going to read to you for an hour, so I'll just give you the cliff notes. So overview is we just want to make this easy for users. So how do we do that? We want to tailor the user experience based on the personas that we've identified, and you guys have heard about them previously. So Matt is our student persona. Zoe and David are our kind of institution personas. And so what we're going to do is we're going to do some cadence product topics. So when I say our topics, we're going to focus on creating programs within the institution side of the application. As an example, we user test with them, we receive some feedback from them, we analyze it, and then we output a nice presentation of sorts so that we can share the results with you. And out of that, we kind of learn, what we need to work on next, what things aren't making sense to our users, how do we change course as we move along, rather than doing it all at the end and wasting everyone's time and money on developed product. So to begin with, we're going to be doing this by kind of releasing something, sharing that with our users, updating it based on that feedback, releasing it again, updating. It's again just kind of an iterative cycle there. The way we're going to do this, as we all know, coming out of this pandemic, it's not in person as we may have done in the past. We're not going to set up at the student union and kind of hang out there. We're going to do this all video style, like we all know and love. And the metrics that we're going to use across the board, this isn't just for our upcoming one, but down the line too. We're going to be looking at things that are more subjective, more things that are coming down to like satisfaction or how they feel about processes. We haven't gotten to the quantitative stuff just yet. That'll come probably once we have a more developed application. We're actually going to be testing with prototypes, which is cheaper, it's faster, and it means that we can work our learnings back into what we're wireframing so that when development hits it, they're on the right path. So some things that we're going to be testing are kind of things like scenario completion. So we ask a user to log in, or we ask a user to create a new program. We see if they can complete it, and we have completion rate as a metric. Critical errors, meaning did something break so much, or did they hit such an invisible wall that they couldn't figure it out? That's a critical error. A non-critical error is something that maybe they were confused by something, they clicked the wrong thing, but they corrected their course and they were able to complete a task. Completion time on task. This is important once we get into like the developed application. How much faster is it to do an application? How much faster is it to create a program and an offering for an institution, things like that. And just to give you an overview of the types of participants, student participants, obviously we're recruiting. There's a pool that's being created from the business area, from what we understand. And so we're going to be looking forward to that coming down the pipe. And if they take a little bit of extra time, that's not the end of the world for us. We have our friends and family we can tap on the shoulder and on all the kids in our lives and all that kind of stuff. Kids, young adults, whatever. Institution participants, that's just going into our MSAC working group and potentially even more to the privates as well as we go forward, because we want to hear voices across the board. And then ministry participants will probably just look at this the people in this meeting and just call you up. So look out for that later. Test priorities. So we also went through the priorities for each application, the institution app versus student app, and kind of just prioritize those there. Going down further, just to give you an idea of how a test runs. We'll send an email out. We'll get them to come to our test. Once we're in there, there's a few roles. There's a facilitator. That's the person saying, I'd like you to go and do this thing. The data loggers, people who are taking notes. Participants, they obviously are the participants, and observers. It might just be someone who is close to this and they would like to see how users are receiving this information. Just there more for observational. We've got a few templates for consent agreements. We're doing a PIA checklist that's happening, so don't worry there. We're all good. And just to give you an example of an example scenario, let me just zoom in slightly. So here's an example of a scenario we're going to ask them to do as a participant. So let's say this is just as an example here. So the topic is we want them to create an education program. And the activity is how we might even want to describe it to them. So create a new program from the application home screen. So we'd get them to do that task, and it would be at the same time timing it, and then we might ask them, how was that? Was that easy? Out of 10, 1 being difficult, 10 being very easy, and did they do it? Yes or no? We're going to start quickly building out, along with these time on task and ease of use questions, a map of how well things are going, and along with our notes. Once we come out the other end of that, we basically would go through, and I'm just going to give you an example of some of the outcomes that we've got here. So this is an example of a previous test that's happened in government that we've done that's all public and all that stuff. But the idea is in your notes, you've got some ideas for what you can improve, and you've got some ideas of how things are shown here as well. So in a nutshell, long nutshell, that is user testing. The idea here again is to try to build understanding of if we're on the right track and make adjustments as we go along. This is going to happen throughout the Agile process and throughout this project. We're just going to be focusing on different areas. The first up is going to be institutions looking at adding programs and offerings. Down the road, it'll be looking at potentially students. How does it go for them creating their first application? How about logging in? How about entering all the information? These are all types of things we're going to be testing for in the future. Thank you.
Thank you for all that detailed analysis and planning, Roop. We really, really appreciate it. And yeah, we'll be beginning our user testing next week, as I believe Adrian Steele has scheduled some upcoming meetings with our institutions. So looking forward to seeing the results of that. I'm going to pass the mic over to Lynn, who is going to be showing us, well, maybe I'll ask. I'm going to put you on the spot, Courtney. If you're around, do you want to show the workflow, or do you want to let Lynn do it? Up to you.
I don't have the mural open right now, so
No,
I'd
no problem.
be happy to jump in, but it may take
I
me
think Lynn is
30
prepared,
seconds.
so it's nice
Yeah.
to see your face. It's good. Lynn's ready to go. So sorry to put you on the spot there. Okay, Lynn, take
I got
it
you,
away.
Courtney. Thank you, Michelle. I got you, Courtney. If there's anything I missed, Courtney, I will open the floor at the end as well, and you can fill in the spots. But let me walk you guys through the workflow that we did. So first off, hello, everyone. So for this sprint, we worked on the student application questions workflow. So what that means is that we looked at the order and organization of the questions. And the order and organization is very important because depending on when we ask the questions and how the students answer those questions, it could offshoot them to another path. However, the idea is to get them back on the main path. So we looked at, or rather, Courtney looked at what the common questions are for both part-time and full-time students. So you can see, I know this is zoomed out right now, but from a 15-feet view, you can see that those yellow stickies, they do represent common questions for part-time and full-time students. And then it breaks off and then it goes back onto the main path here. So let's just take a closer look with what has been done here. And just again, a big shout out to Courtney who led this work and made a beautiful mural board there. So yeah, let's get into it. So when we started this,
I
again,
need
the
you
yellow.
to zoom way in there.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect. Thanks.
yes, I will.
Thank
So just to give you a lay of the land, if you are looking at the looking to go back into this mirror board, we do have a legend for you. But just zooming in closely, one of the first sections that you will see are the study details. Study details are things like when the classes start, the institutions, the program, etc. And then we have organized it into a personal information section. So in your personal information, you'll have personal stuff, employment information, and also family information. As part of the personal information as well, we also have what we call a profile review. In the profile review, it's something where we can store in the account level so that we're not always asking the students the same questions over and over. That way, students will be able to ask the students once and then repopulate the same answers depending on the scenario there. So that will make it really easy for the student on that end. So that's the profile review. And then if you go in closer, you can see their citizenship, BC residency, Indigenous question, etc. I won't go through everything. You do have the link if you want to just kind of get a poke in there, but that's what we're doing there. So just moving along, you'll notice that we get then into financial information, and this is kind of where it starts to break off, where we ask that family information, that dependent information question, where it then breaks you off into if you are a dependent student, that's where we would assess the intensity, grad date, marital status, etc. Now, if you answer the question, the dependent info, then it may shoot you off into the student is independent. Again, this is the intensity for the part-time workflow there. And then you're going to ask a series of questions here, depending if you're a dependent or independent student, you'll be asked these questions. And then you'll notice that we put the student back on the main road here to ask those common questions as well, leaving us there to the finish line there as well. So just going through everything, I think this is going to really help us design that one application for part-time and full-time students. It's going to be a really nice for the build as well. And in terms of the user experience, part of I think Courtney's work is to be really cognizant about flagging those sensitive questions. We don't really want to ask everyone, the deceased question, the parental deceased question. So we want to be really cognizant when we ask that question and where we ask that question. So all while organizing it in one application for part-time and full-time. So that's the overview of the workflow there. So I'm just going to also open the floor up for Courtney if you have anything that you'd want to add as well.
Yeah, great. So this is it from a high level. There is another document that has all of the granularity that Robin and I have been working on, that has the specific questions with the specific wording, with help text, with rules and outcomes. And that's going to be something that kind of evolves, but getting the flow is really important for the UX UI team to continue on with their wireframing. What you'll notice is you'll see the exclamation mark on some of the stickies. And what that means is that is actually an area where we'll be able to, I think it's the exclamation mark. Yes. So the exclamation mark signifies that that's an area where we'll be able to ask some additional information to reduce the number of appeal questions or appeal results afterwards. So we're working with Robin, and Robin and I are coming up with the best way possible to collect information so that we are limiting the amount of appeals that students have to go through after submission, because there's a lot of areas where we can ask just a small little bit of information up front to reduce a really complicated process in the future. So that work is ongoing, and Robin and I are just in the process of finishing up some of those areas. Yeah, so if anyone has questions, I see there's some coming in, I'll answer some, but feel free to, after this, reach out to me if you have any questions. Happy to chat about it.
Thanks, Courtney. Over to you, Michelle.
Yeah, well, yeah, we do have some great questions. Some of the information that is being asked about is in the student profile, which has been previously developed on other wireframes. So there's the profile level, and once that's established, then it gets to the application, and then we ask subsequent information. So in that profile review sticky that Lynn is pointing out, they're just reviewing all the information that they have in the profile is still correct. Yes, now I'm going to pass the mic back to you, Roop, to discuss designation stuff.
I'm muted, but I'm not talking, so technically I'm not talking to myself, so that's okay. 1 second here, sharing my Figma screen. Okay, so let's talk about how we display designation. So as you can see, these tiny little thumbnails are all the screens that are all the wireframes that we keep talking about. But just to give some context about designation. So in terms of our overall sitemap, this is kind of in the overall institution management section. And so you're able to manage the designation for your institution. I'm just giving you a kind of overview before we get into the details views, because this is where they come from, right? So here you can see that when you go into the Manage Designation screen, you'll see a summary of your designations, your expired ones, your past ones, and your active designation. And you can see here when there is a time for renewal, you'll see that kind of message coming up here to get you to go ahead and renew. Once you have renewed, we kind of show them in this way, where you show your active and your upcoming designation that will become effective at a later date, and you can see that there. But yeah, let's go into kind of what the view of that designation looks like. So what we wanted to do here, again, is at a glance give you as much information as we can. When we're showing things like your agreement contacts, when we're talking about your designation start and your expiry date, we just want it to be very clear what's happening here. Down below here, you'll notice that we don't mention Schedule A, B, C, D, E, F, all those schedules that are thrown around. And we're in talks with the business area as well as kind of just within the team here about what do those schedules really mean in the context of a designation. As you know, there might be some updates to policy in the future, but really they care about what the documents are as they relate to this designation. So for instance, your designation agreement, maybe it doesn't say Schedule A, but it tells you what the document is, so it's very clear what they're looking at. Down here and below, you can kind of see the acknowledgements that user has accepted when they sign into this when they sign this designation agreement as a part of onboarding or a renewal. And you can kind of see also the dates that it was submitted are also there. The important thing here is these are all kind of check marks that they check as they go along. I didn't think it was necessary to show check marks for every single thing. Like I agree to the designation, I agree to the BC policy manual. It's just it was read and agreed to by this person on this date. It gets the point across. And then when you go into edit, you can go in and change things like your location. Say you want to add another location to this designation agreement. You can go ahead and click that button to see all your other locations that have been approved. So if you're wondering, well, how do I add one here? It doesn't happen on the designation editing screen. There's a separate section for locations where you add them, and then it has to go through a process of being approved and has to have an approved program and all these kinds of things. So all of these would be pre-approved locations that the ministry has looked at already. And then once you do that, you can see that it gets added to the designated locations. And the nice thing about this, thinking in this kind of new context, new world kind of scenario, is that because the ministry staff have gone through and they've approved this location already, do they need to go in and approve this again? Maybe a notification say, hey, they added another location to their designation, but really they've done all the legwork to begin with. We don't need to approve it again, right? When it does come into major changes, like say, for instance, changing the legal authority of this designation, that's when we might need to kick into a more of a process. But the idea is for these lower level changes, allow them to do it on their own, self-serve, do their own thing, and really take the burden off the ministry staff of having to deal with all these approvals that aren't necessary. There you go. Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Rube. So yeah, we still have some tweaks and some nuance that we still need to figure out in the designation area. We're not going to get to building that for a few sprints. But yeah, there's some really good heavy lifting that's been done by the UX team with regards to that. With regards to the application, the financial assistance application, we'll be doing some work against that coming up next sprint. So hopefully we have some stuff to show you there coming soon. I'm going to let Schwenker talk to us about Sonar Cloud. Sounds interesting. Automated quality testing, Schwenker?
Sort of.
Okay.
Let me share my screen here. Sharing. So too many things open. This one. So for those of you who don't know, Sonar Cloud is basically the cloud version of Sonar Cube. What it is it is basically a assessing tool for like code health, application code consistencies, bugs, vulnerabilities, and those types of things. So basically, putting a long story short is when we make a code change or anything like that, basically what's called a pull request is generated. And that's basically like a code change. Part of that is we do different things during that time to make things secure, do testing and that type of thing to make sure that everything is working properly. Part of what we did is enable Sonar Cloud with our repository. So basically every single time we make a code change, this application automatically runs against it. And then you will see something like this show up right at the bottom, which is basically it did a scan of all the changes that were done and detects bugs, vulnerability, security hotspots, and code smells. Let's open this up. So this is sort of like the dashboard of this system. I'm not going to get too in the weeds for those of you who do want like a more in-depth demo or something like that. I'm more than happy to set one up because I'm sure some of you are going to find this a lot more interesting than others. But basically what it does is it scans every code change that we do and detects vulnerabilities and bugs. So as you see, there was a couple things in this one that have to-do comments. It flags to-dos like, hey, you should do those things. In this case, this is something we'll be doing next time, so that's why they're here. And then if you look at like the entire thing, you get a nice pretty dashboard of all the things happening. So if you look at code smells, like there's obviously more in here. We just enabled it recently, so there's some things that we're gonna have to go back to. But what this does is every single time that every change we do, we get a nice report like this that is basically enforced. We don't have a choice whether it happens or not. It happens regardless. And then it's up to us to deal with and mitigate. So yeah, get a nice pretty dashboard. We know the problems, and it's really easy for developers and for changes to see what this picks up and make the changes as we go.
Yeah, so in some cases, we want to clean up those bugs and vulnerabilities as we're building, if we can. In some cases, depending on the situation, we may have to create another ticket, a task, or a user story in the backlog to correct the issue. But this way we can keep on top of it and manage our technical debt very closely. Did I miss anything there, Andrew?
No, that pretty much sums it up. And then for those that are familiar with other things, such as the WAVA scan, which is the Web Application Vulnerability Assessment, and there's dozens of them. ZAP scan's another one. This is sort of one of those other tools. It's not like a penetration tester, but it is one level of like vulnerability scan, essentially.
So code smells, are they smelling like bad things or good smells? Like what are the smells that they're smelling?
Smells are normally like generally consistency things. They're sort of things like, okay, this isn't a like normally a critical problem or a vulnerability, but it's like something's up. Like
Something doesn't smell right.
basically.
Okay,
Yeah.
I love this. That's hilarious.
And yeah, sometimes it really helps. The big thing is consistency, making sure that as we're doing things, if we're following the guidelines of the tool, that at a code level, things are much more consistent, which is the big thing.
Cool.
And
Awesome.
the next thing there was the program data model. So if you recall, what we did last time is we actually did a full ERD, which is like all the tables and all the views and everything like that. What we did this time is we actually just did it in Excel because we came to a conclusion very, very quickly. And then so what we'll be doing is this is basically the program data model here. This is not, of course, the actual fields that are going to be in there, anything like that. The big thing here is we're using a flat model just for speed and simplicity's sake. Again, I won't go too in depth with it. Next sprint, after the tables are developed, we'll be able to basically generate a pretty table from the tables that we make. But this basically, we got together as all the devs and determined how we want to approach this problem. So when we go to build it, we're good to go. Yeah, I won't go too
You were
in-depth.
going, oh, okay, that was quick.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a nice and simple one. Basically,
Okay.
following this, the means of when we're approaching like a new foundational problem, we put all our heads together, get through the problem quick, and then we have an approach plan. That's the whole point of the data model.
Great.
discussions.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Schwenker.
No problem.
Okay, we're going to carry on to section 4, to the actual product review while we're all here. And we're going to look at locations and navigating through the locations, and Guru's going to show us that work.
Hey, hi team. Let's see some screens. Okay, so as a part of this sprint, so we have institution users Zoe and David. So when
We're
different
seeing your
users
team's
speak to
chat.
Sorry? Oh,
You're
you're showing your chat. Showing the
showing
wrong
the
screen.
it. Okay, just hold on. Are you seeing this now? Okay.
Yeah, we're
There
seeing
you
it
go.
now.
Sorry, yes. Okay, just repeating myself back. For different types of institution users, different locations has to be loaded. So that is a part of the story which we were working on for this sprint. So let's see. So when so SIMS A2E test user, let's take this user as a Zoe user. So he logs in. Sorry, she logs in, and she'll be able to view a particular locations, what she is actually assigned to for the particular institution. So each and every location has their programs, applications, and users, and these placeholders has been given. The same way, so when a different institution user is logged in, only those institution users authorized locations will be seen. So for example, for Zoe, you can see from location 1 to 11 here. The same way, if I just log off and log in as a David user. Just hold on.
Is anyone having issues with Mural right now? Mine seems to have gone down.
I'm not quite.
Okay. While you're logging in, I'm just asking.
Okay.
Okay.
It's taking a while. I don't know what happened. Okay, at last it came. So if I log in as a different user, okay, as David. Come on.
Yeah, I think we're having some network stuff that's happening.
Okay. Loading.
Yeah, everything's loading.
Okay, can I show it in my local so that okay, at last. I think it's the connection with the VPN or what? I'm not sure.
Right now you are on the BCEAD, so it's outside our servers.
Yeah, I know.
Well, so let's have a look here. And how is your connection doing? Do you want to show your work while Guru's
Yeah,
computers?
I'm also having the same issue.
Oh my goodness, we're all having issues.
I can
think it's the
Yeah.
I'm also doing the same message.
Okay.
I don't need that to show. I can show the CRA part without the
Okay.
text.
Yeah, why don't we let Signori show for a bit, and hopefully our stuff figures itself out. I'm getting a bad gateway in Mural for some reason.
Okay. So that's about the CRA integration, last part. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Cool. So that's about, last time we showed the CRA file generation and that we are sending the file to CRA. So if you look in the diagram, our servers are running here, our application, and we need to travel all the way through these ministry servers to reach CRA. That was the last sprint development. So now we are getting back a response from CRA and reading and persisting into our database. So basically now we have the full path established into CRA and back into our database. So Andrew helped us and created like a really nice set of users with CRA and BCSC. So we have like a set of users that we can authenticate with the BC service cards. They are going to be added to our database, and they are going to be valid for CRA. So basically a user that can log in as a normal user and be authenticated. We have like a nice set of users like anonymous name users and other scenarios. What I'm going to display right now is in our database, so just like a regular Excel spreadsheet. Just consider that we have like the folks here. I'm hiding a lot of information just to not be displaying some numbers and stuff, but we have Jack that has an anonymous name, and we have another folks. Those folks are waiting for this invalidation to happen. What's going to happen is that to complete the full cycle, last time we are writing some files in a request folder, and now we are going to read the file. So the process takes some time until CRA responds. I have a file read here. I can show a similar file. I just like change the SIM numbers, but that is the response from the CRA that we are reading. Here we have the SIM numbers and the codes here. Like I know that this means error and this means success. Believe me, it's there. So if we just put the response, that's exactly the file that we got from CRA. We are gonna be processing this file. I'm gonna talk about the schedulers, and that file is gonna be updating these fields here. It's gonna be, I'm gonna just simulate the calling to our server, but just assume that that's gonna happen from time to time. And when that happens, we are gonna have like a true or false. It could be a positive or negative answer. And the users are gonna be having the status, and we can play with that. Basically, that enables us all the way through sending a request, receiving, and now it's there. We can use it. We can make the request again if we need to revalidate in the future. So the process that I just clicked here happens in a scheduled basis. So every hour right now, there is a scheduler that's gonna create the file to send to CRA. So every hour, a file is gonna be generated here, like that. And every hour, every 15 minutes for now, we are gonna try to read the response. So 15 minutes because it can happen anytime, and we just would like to get to the user, like populate the status in our server as soon as possible. So the times are completely adjustable. Just consider that there will be something generated every 1 hour, 2 hours, and something that's going to be reading and populate back the database. And we have the full process happening. That's it.
Perfect. How are you doing, Anne? Is your
I
at
think
work?
mine is up again.
Yours is up
I
again?
think
Okay.
it's with the BC ID. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll just share this.
Awesome. Thank you.
Okay. Let me share the screen quickly. So yeah. So we already saw like Zoe's locations at the left hand side. So now it is David's turn. So you are seeing only two locations which David has been authorized to view. So with respect to each and every location. So the same way we have already seen, this is also part of this sprints work. Like we have already seen add new location in our previous sprints to just add a new location for our institution. The same way now we are able to edit it. See, for example, if you want to edit like college, if you just update it, so you can see like that Victoria University has been changed to Victoria College. The same way when we add a new location, we just add a test location, create address one, city, BC, zip, Canada, and then submitted. This gets completed, submitted, submission is done. It's created successfully, and as soon as you go home, you'll be seeing the test location populated directly with respect to the user's authorization, and it comes over here. The same way, this location, when we log in with Zoe's ID, okay? We'll not see the test location. This is test location 6 for Nanaimo. This is not the one, but we'll not see the test location here. It'll be visible only for Zoe's. Sorry, David's.
David's
view.
account. Got it.
Yeah. Okay, that's the part of 2 things that has been done as part of this sprint.
Great.
Guys have
Thank
any
you, Guru.
questions? Yeah.
Yeah, claps all around. Awesome. Cool. Anne, are you ready to show some users?
Sure. Let me share this. Hi all. Can you see my screen?
We can.
So I'm logging as a Zoe, institution admin. Now Zoe has a permission to add a new user. Also, Zoe has a permission to like edit all active users, and Zoe can disable or enable the users. So first I will show you how Zoe can add a new user. Zoe will be having a button over here. So a pop-up will be coming where she can select the users. So this list of users, they are coming from BCID. Now she can either make this user as an admin of the institution, or she can add any user type according to any user type, location-based user type. For example, if she wants this user to be admin, he has to enable this button and click add. That new user is added as an admin over here. Now I will create another user. I'm giving access to this user like as a location base. Like for example, I'm giving access to location 1. So here like we have like 2 user roles. Like one is user, or Zoe can add the user as a location manager. And Zoe also has a permission to add the same user like multiple locations. For example, Zoe is adding this user as a user of this location 2. Now this user will be having access to 2 locations, location 1 and location 2. Location 1, this user will be the location manager, and location 2, this user will be the user. And like this, he can Zoe can add like a multiple location. So now this user is shown over here. Now Zoe has a permission to edit all the users by clicking on this edit icon. There will be another pop-up, the edit pop-up, where she can either change this location or add extra locations to them, or she can also make this user as admin. For example, I'm making this user as an admin. Now this user is an admin.
Go over.
I'm making I'm removing this admin role, and I'm giving location 11 as a location manager. Now this user is having access to location 11 as a location manager. Yeah, now the next feature is that Zoe can, yeah, here actually there is, yeah, Zoe cannot edit or like disable or enable herself. So that's why Zoe is like the edit icon as well as the disable icon is not showing here. Now Zoe has also the permission to enable or disable a user. For example, this user in my another tab, I'm logging as a this user. Since this user is already added to the system as an admin, she or he can log in. So in another tab, at first I'm logging as this user. Sorry. So the college F user here, I'm logging as a college F user, and he's also an admin. He also has a permission to like add users, edit users, and disable enable users. But he can't edit or disable himself. Now this admin, this is a Zoe user now. SIMS to college F admin is disabling Zoe. And I'm returning to my other browser. Now when you Zoe refresh, Zoe will be logged out from our application and she won't be having access to the system. And if she tries again, again she won't be having access to the system.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's yeah. And if she want access, then like the admin can enable her. And now when she log in, she will be having access to the system. Yeah, that's about the story.
Awesome. Thank you. It looks great. I know that we've, as an internal team, identified a few enhancements that we could do, but the bones are all there. So thank you, Anne. Schwenker or Sumati, did you make it online? No.
Yeah.
You're here? I
Yes.
hear you. Awesome. Are you able to show us some of the assessment foundations?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Are you able to see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So now I'm just going to log into the FormsFlow AI, the staff portal for managing the assessments and all. And the scope of this the sprint is specifically to gather information from the application and take it to the workflow engine. That is like the engine which is going to carry the calculations which we have been having on the Excel, right? So the calculation is going to be automated, and then like it will just have the values calculated. So that's a scope. The subsequent sprint will have like a review of the calculations on the UI. So that's about it. And it also covers this sprint about the structuring and how do we want to manage the calculations. Okay, so I'm just logging in with my IDER as a staff. And here we have created a application screen, which is going to like the digital application for the loan process. Like you can see here, the same the program thing. So it talks about the welcome, and then like selecting the program here. So I'm just going to fill in some data for the calculations. It's all dummy data. Offering ID. So let me take one. I'm just going to random dates, location, BC. Sorry about the numbers I'm just going to use. May not make sense, but I'm just using for this demo, okay? Next. So these are the questions that were on the application. I'm just random and I'm like filling it up for the calculations to proceed. Anticipating, no. Do you have any dependents? No. And so this covers all the personal information of the application. So that's what I've like filled in here. And next we go to the parental information. I'm just going to give no and like I'm just like this is sending a lot of information. I'll just give like some test.
Just so everyone's aware, we're doing some work on these questions next sprint. So these are just practice questions that we have up here for now that Sumati's working through, just to get us to the calculation of the assessment. Yeah.
So just fill the financial information. So next it goes for the confirmation. So I just fill in the data. And once I fill in all the data and submit, right?
This is the magic. Magic's happening.
So what will happen? So you can see here, I'm not able to completely show you guys the actual. So right now at the back end, you can see the assessment is being done. So I'll just like quickly have a look at the, I'll also log into the workflow engine for you guys. Okay. So this is a workflow engine. This is an administrator portal for the workflow engine. So just I'm trying to show you guys, yes, the values that have been filled on the UI has been carried to the workflow engine, and also the assessment is being done. So that is what I'm just trying to showcase here. So you can just click the numbers and you can see here the federal total cost and the provincial total cost like calculated over here. And how this calculation is done, that is like using the workflow engine. So what we have typically done is like a gateway. So all the requests that comes from the screen, it goes to a process called a gateway. And this will take care of filtering only the data that is required for the actual calculation, because we may capture too many information on the UI, which may not be typically used for the calculations, right? So that filtering of the data and the normalization happens on the gateway process. And once the data is normalized, it goes to the actual assessment workflow. The assessment workflow has been like ensured to be in closest with what we have on the Excel in terms of like the total cost. And when it comes to the total resources, the provincial, federal, and finally the, so we are trying to exactly maintain the structure for with the business terms. And that's what you are seeing here, the tuition cost, book cost, exceptional cost. And in case if there is something specific to the program year, they are like maintained as a lookup or the DMNs. The technical term is DMN. So you can go and look here for say, for example, for MSOL allowance, right? It is based on the province as well as the living situation and the program year, right? So how this will be maintained is down the line, where as we progress on the year, all we have to only do is like add one more rule here, the program year, and what is the living situation and what is the value against every province. So all we need to do is just the maintenance of the values over here, and this assessment process, right, like will take care of doing the calculations, right? And at the same time, we also have something called a post calculation. In case if you wanted to go and review, or if you wanted to have some edits applied on top of the actual values, that's where this post assessment workflow is going to help us. So right now, what we have done is we have just captured the data from the UI, taken to the workflow engine, and the calculations are done. So the formulas are being just written here, right? And after and it has been also the actual calculated value is also carried over to the post review process, but it is not connected on the UI to display the actual screen. So that's why you're not able to see it up. And the post review screen, this is the screen that we created for the post review, which will be part of the next sprint review. So you can see here total cost, provincial, federal, total resources. So this will be integrated with all other remaining formulas on the subsequent sprint.
So can I just stop for a second and just say that this is a huge big deal? And I have to say, sometimes I don't get it until I see it at Sprint Demo, what a big deal it is. But what we have just shown you is that we are almost there. We have taken the application taken some of the answers to those questions, and what Sumati and the dev team have done is built the beginning of the assessment. So you are seeing it happen. There are more things to be done in the assessment. We're not done, but this is super exciting. And I think what you're also seeing is that this has been done over the last, we started to show you last sprint and this sprint. So over the last 4 weeks, huge amount of progress. And I think you're starting to get a sense of, look how easy it's going to be for you and, of course, importantly, students to see the outcome of the assessment and be able to see how the answers to their question turned into a particular number. So really, really important work. So thank you.
Mm-hmm. Really good work. Yeah, thank you so much, Sumati. I was just reveling on how you took the complicated rules assessment spreadsheet and managed to create those logical workflows so that they make more sense to us. And with all the rules behind each one of those boxes, it's like, it's incredible magic.
Yep.
And we really appreciate your work. And I think, yeah, it's just, I think it has to do with our process too. We were able to focus solely on this for the last 2 weeks. And so that really is helpful to let us dig in and just focus on it. Okay, so let's just quickly pass it over to you, Elise, to talk about our goals for Sprint 11.
Mm-hmm. So what's coming next? And can I just say, I think it's pretty obvious that we're starting to really hit critical mass here. There's a lot of really exciting and important work. We've done a lot. We're not completely done, but a lot of the foundational pieces are now built. So hopefully you're going to start to see the fruits of that labor. So we're going to continue to work on that assessment. We've showed you largely calculating costs. Of course, we still have to calculate resources and those kinds of things. So there'll continue to be some work to make sure that we continue to make progress on the assessment. Oh, Andrew, remind me what the CI/CD environment, that acronym, remind me what that is. I don't recall the acronym.
That's the continuous integration, continuous development. It's basically the deployment infrastructure stuff between environments, having dev, test, and production.
Okay.
Pipeline.
So lots of technical stuff there. So we're going to continue to work on that. UX UI is going to continue now. We've spent a lot of time focusing on the institution account, and we're going to do a little bit of a shift now and focus more on the student application wireframe. So looking at the student account, how is the student navigating through their account? We do have user testing planned for next sprint. So we've had a number of our institutions, volunteer participants, to start actually trying to throw some programs at our new approach starting the week of June 14th, next week. So we'll be conducting some user testing next week and digging in a little bit more around that PD verification. We'd hoped to do that this sprint, but didn't get quite as far as we'd hoped. And we need to suck a bunch of information out of Courtney's brain as well. So we're going to be doing that. We also have some dashboards to work on. So some of the institution account, getting closer to getting that piece of work done. From a development perspective, we're going to take all of the UX UI stuff that we've worked on for programs and give it to the dev team so that they can actually build it, which is pretty exciting. And so what we've shown you so far around programs is largely what the UX UI team refer to as wireframes. They're pictures. They're not functional developments. So the idea is to give it to the dev team so that they can build it and we can show it to you in action next sprint, at the end of this next sprint. We're also going to then, of course, continue working on that. So not only are you going to be able to see it, but you can add a program, edit a program, and do the same thing with offerings, because remembering the two are going to be connected and interdependent, but you will be able to have an approved program and maybe no offerings. So so we're going to build it that way so that you can do that. So that's it's going to be a busy next sprint, and it'll be really exciting to show you the program stuff. Plus, of course, we'll also be able to give you the feedback from the institutions. What did they say about it? So come back and listen to us in 2 weeks to tell you about how that went.
Yeah, gosh, I didn't even put that on there, that we'll be doing some interviews next week.
Yeah, that user testing is we'll hear what they have to say, and we can give you some summary of what they're saying. So far, they were excited. They didn't go running from the hills when we shared the idea with them. Obviously, what they want to do is try throwing a few programs against it and see if it sticks. So that'll be some interesting work next week.
Awesome.
Next sprint, pardon me.
Yeah, so we took our time today.
Yeah, there's a few questions. There was also one, maybe we could just add, that came to me through private message, is around the ability to delete users. So we can talk about that. So the first question, and I think we answered it, was around gender. And what Courtney and Lynn described is there's a little yellow sticky that says profile, individual profile, I think. That actually represents a bunch of questions. I think there's probably a good 10 or so questions. We are absolutely continuing to capture gender, and we will also capture gender as it relates to the new standard that has been created by the BC government, which includes a third option. So we're moving away from binary gender to the idea of a third option, an X option. So allow students who do not identify in a binary way. So we will make sure that we are compliant with that standard. So then we said, if Zoe indicates the user as an admin, does that automatically give access? I think we answered that. Yes, that's the exciting part. The admin user profile is kind of like the golden ticket, right? Charlie and the Chocolate Factory reference for those. That is, yeah, they get to have admin access not only over the institution account users, but also over the location users. At the same time, and I think this is the next question, we have identified the need for a location manager profile, and essentially that's an admin user profile, but for one location only. Oh, good. So I wasn't the only one. I never know if I'm dating myself when I use some of these references to the golden ticket. So,
Elise, Ron has a question on the phone.
Oh, thank you. Great, Ron.
Are you on mute, Ron?
Sorry about that. I was the one that asked the question about gender. The issue is the standard is changing the third option from X to an I. The service card registry has a U as the third option. And the institutions have a much broader spectrum of gender identity. And I'm wondering, are we going to, the institutions are trying to standardize on a limited set of gender identities. Are we going to grab that and actually expand the options that we offer within the students applying for a student loan? Because they go to the university and they get a wide range, and they come to the student loan and you get 3.
Yeah, and so I'm not aware that we are. Sorry, somebody was going to answer. Maybe that person knows more than me. But what I was going to say, and someone can tell me if I'm wrong, is that we will adhere to the standard that the BC government requires us to adhere to. And I believe that that is the 3 options. And I do believe that that is not quite as broad as some of the institutions would like. But am I wrong in someone else that may know more?
So Caitlin here. Yeah, so there's been quite a lot of policy work done on the BC data standard, gender data standard, and there is quite a lot of complexity there. But we will be following that standard, and
This is a very emerging policy area, so I expect it's probably more likely that the institutions are more likely to standardize their approach, so that the data is comparable across all of these different data sets.
Yeah, so we'll take our lead from the BC government. There's a working group that has been developing this, and we will take our direction from them.
They've come out with that, but the issue is they've come out with guidelines, and all that they talk about in the guidelines are the 3 options, even though the standard has a more fulsome breakdown, which we have passed to the institutions quite a while ago when the standard was evolving. That hasn't really changed that much, Caitlin, right?
Yep. So this isn't it's not an issue for this project. And there are, I was actually just on a call yesterday with Kathleen Asaf and Hayden Lansdell about this, and it's trucking along.
Okay.
Thanks, Ron.
Great.
Great question.
Yeah, no, and the gender conversation has been going on for a long time. So this will move us into alignment because we are out of alignment right now. So the next question is so much clearer than the Excel doc. I'm guessing what we're talking about is the assessment there versus the Excel, the calculator, right, which we often refer to. For the cost box titled books, can we rename program-related costs to match policy? Yeah, thank you for that feedback. We definitely want to make sure that what we have aligns with the policy, and so good example. Let's take a look at that, and let's make sure that we're as I mentioned at the beginning, you're going to see some things like that, but thank you for flagging that for us, because I don't know that we would have caught that. Capability to delete users. So this is the question, and Andrew, you might need to help me with the answer to this one, but we've had this conversation. So right now, and you saw that Anne showed us a list of users, and what you are seeing is users that are in the BCEID. So we don't see people if they're not registered in the BCEID and connected to the institution. What you saw was the ability to make them active or inactive, and of course, give them a profile. What you didn't see was the ability to delete them. And if I recall correctly, how we got to that was we said, well, we don't really need that, because if they need to delete them, that they will do that at the BCEID account level, which means they will no longer be visible on our list. Is that correct, technical team?
Sort of. So like we did flag this as something we need to think about in the future, because what happens when someone is deleted on the BCEID side, and what happens when you go to manage users on our side. So we do have that sort of flagged as more in depth, but right now, if you do delete it from BCEID side, it won't delete it from our side. And then the concept of when deleting something from our side is, do we actually want to hard delete a user, or do we want to just disable them, or how do we actually want to do that? So it does branch off into a few things, and we just need to think about what we want to do.
Okay, so more work to come.
Yeah.
Okay. The next question, do all provinces have the same standard on gender? And so the answer would be no, and isn't that a fun experience? And
but
so,
I think the thing here, Elise, is the key to this question is that BC students, regardless of where they're residing in the country, are applying for BC student loans. So they use a BC student, BC services card. They will be sort of obliged to our gender standards. So it shouldn't cause issues, but that's just sort of off the top of my head.
Yeah, and we work closely with the federal government and the other jurisdictions to talk about this issue on an ongoing basis. So there's another comment, policy tension between governments need to categorize people and collect information. Yeah, around gender, this is the piece. So yeah, it's that dynamic tension between how do we organize people into groups, what are those groups? Yeah, and there's no right or wrong answer, of course. So that's where we'll look to government to tell us how they would like us to organize those categories. So yeah, it's challenging. There's been a lot of conversation, and I know there's been a lot of really hard work done across the province with different groups, and of course that also applies to other ministries as well. So we want to make sure that our information is also something that can be looked at in the same categories as other people's information across BC government. So health, for example, or education or other kinds of things. That's why we use the same standard. Are there any other questions about what we've showed you today? Designation stuff, or we showed you the high
Locations,
level.
users.
Yep. We showed you the high level workflow for the application, and you saw we're looking forward to showing you more of the questions next time, and you also saw it in action, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. If you do have burning questions that you think of at 3 in the morning, just feel free to send us an email too, or collect your questions in advance of the meeting to be prepared to answer them, because we recognize that you guys don't get a lot of time with us. You only see us every 2 weeks. So we want to try and make use of this time as best as possible.
Yeah, we also, just so folks know, we do meet as a business on the alternate Wednesday mornings. So if there's a piece of this that you'd like to go into more detail, we could spend some time on that other Wednesday, maybe going in detail. Just let us know what you'd like. You send them to generic mod email. Yes, we do have a generic mod email address, the mod@gov.bc.ca. You're also welcome to send them to myself or throw them in the chat here, and we'll pick it up.
Yeah, we're all around.
Yep.
Okay, guys. Thank you very much. We went almost to our full time today. I'm impressed. We had lots to show. Okay, then we'll let you go.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye.